The front door creaked as I stepped into our apartment, my arms laden with groceries. Something felt off. The usual evening stillness was broken by hurried movements coming from our bedroom. "Damon," I called out, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. No answer, just more rustling. I made my way down the hallway, my footsteps muffled by the carpet. The bedroom door was ajar, and through the gap, I could see Damon frantically stuffing clothes into his leather suitcase, the one we'd bought for our honeymoon 2 years ago. "I can't do this right now," he whispered into his phone, his back to me. "I'll be there in an hour. Just wait for me." My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. "Going somewhere?" He spun around, nearly dropping his phone. For a moment, his face showed genuine shock before settling into something harder, more distant. "Lila, you're home early. And you're packing." I gestured to the suitcase. "Business trip?" "No." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a nervous habit I used to find endearing. "I'm leaving." The word leaving hung in the air between us like smoke. "Leaving," I repeated, my voice surprisingly steady. "For how long?" "For good." He zipped up the suitcase with finality. "This isn't working anymore. It hasn't been for a while." I thought about the pregnancy test hidden in my purse, the one I'd bought just hours ago. The one I'd planned to take tonight, after making his favorite dinner. "There's someone else, isn't there?" His silence was answer enough. "How long?" "6 months." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Her name is Marissa. She works in marketing at my company." The room started spinning. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of kisses that meant nothing, of "I love yous" that were hollow. "Your parents," I managed. "What about Sunday dinners with Evelyn and Harvey?" "They'll understand. Eventually." He grabbed his suitcase, finally looking at me. "I've already talked to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from them soon." As he brushed past me, I caught a whiff of unfamiliar perfume on his jacket. Floral, expensive, everything I wasn't. "Damon," I called after him, my voice breaking. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or just disappear?" He paused at the doorway, his shoulders tense. Would it have made a difference? The front door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone in our half-empty closet, staring at the spaces where his clothes used to be. My hand drifted to my stomach, and I wondered how many other empty spaces I would have to fill. The Sunday dinner table at the Larks felt emptier than usual, even though only one chair sat vacant. Evelyn reached across and squeezed my hand, her wedding ring catching the light from the chandelier above. "He's not worth your tears, sweetheart," she said, passing me another helping of pot roast I hadn't asked for. "A man who abandons his family isn't the son we raised." Harvey's fork scraped against his plate. "Did he say anything about where he's staying?" "With her," I managed, the words bitter in my mouth. "Someone from work named Marissa." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken anger. Harvey's jaw tightened, the same way Damon's used to when he was upset. The resemblance made my chest ache. "I should have seen it coming," I continued, pushing food around my plate. "The late nights, the business trips, the new cologne." "Stop that right now," Evelyn interrupted, her voice firm but gentle. "You're not responsible for his choices." My phone buzzed. A text from Damon. "Need to pick up more clothes. Be there at 8. Make sure you're not." Harvey noticed my expression. "What is it?" "He wants to get his things." I showed them the message. "Doesn't even want to see me." "Like hell." Harvey stood up, his napkin falling to the floor. "I'm coming with you." "We both are," Evelyn added, already clearing the plates. Back at the apartment, we waited. At exactly 8, the door opened. Damon froze when he saw us, his key still in the lock. "Mom?"
"Dad."
His confidence faltered. "What are you doing here?" "Supporting our daughter-in-law," Evelyn replied coolly. "Someone has to." Damon's eyes darted to me. "This is between Lila and me." "No." Harvey stepped forward. "You made it our business when you decided to throw away your marriage without a second thought." "You don't understand." "We understand perfectly." Harvey cut him off. "Your mother and I raised you better than this." Damon's face hardened. "I'm not having this conversation." He pushed past us toward the bedroom. I followed him, watching as he yanked clothes from hangers. Your parents didn't deserve to find out like this. And you did, he snapped, then immediately looked ashamed. Not of his actions, I realized, but of losing his composure. Get what you need and go, I said quietly. But remember this moment, Damon. Remember who stood by you and who you left behind. He paused at the doorway, his arms full of designer suits he'd bought with our joint savings. For a moment, I thought I saw regret in his eyes. Then he walked away, leaving the family photos on his nightstand untouched. Evelyn wrapped her arm around my shoulders as the front door clicked shut. You have us, she whispered. Always. I nodded, my hand unconsciously moving to my stomach. Soon, I'd have to tell them everything. I hadn't meant to stop by Damon's office. The video editing studio where I worked was just 2 blocks away, and I needed to drop off some contracts. But there he was, in the glass-walled conference room, holding court with his development team. My hand froze on the door handle when I heard my name. Lila. Damon's laugh cut through the glass. She thinks night classes will make her something more than a glorified YouTube editor. It's almost cute. The team's laughter felt like needles in my skin. A woman in a red dress, Marissa, I realized, touched his arm possessively. At least she's finally out of your hair, she said, loud enough to carry. God, imagine being stuck with someone so basic. I should have walked away. Instead, I pushed open the door. The laughter died instantly. Damon's face went from smug to shocked in a heartbeat. Lila, what are you? The divorce papers, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Your lawyer sent them to my old email. Thought you might need them. I placed the envelope on the table, noting how Marissa's perfectly manicured hand withdrew from his arm. We could have handled this another way, Damon muttered, not meeting my eyes. Like how you handled telling your colleagues about my pathetic career aspirations. The words came out sharp, precise. Don't worry, I won't embarrass you with my basic presence much longer. One of his teammates, Mike, I think, shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should give you 2 a minute. No need. I cut in. I'm already leaving. But Damon? I turned at the door. Those night classes? They're for business management. I'm starting my own production company. Turns out your parents believe in investing in family, even if their son doesn't. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? Ask Harvey about the startup loan he offered me yesterday. Though I suppose you'd have to actually speak to your parents for that. Marissa's perfect smile cracked slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? I pulled out my phone, showing the email confirmation from Harvey's investment firm. Unlike some people, I don't need to lie to get what I want. As I walked out, I heard Damon's raised voice. Dad can't do this. That money was supposed to be for my software venture. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the elevator, but not from fear. For the first time since he left, I felt something other than pain, something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. My phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. Coming for dinner tonight? Made your favorite lasagna. I smiled, one hand resting briefly on my still flat stomach. Some family bonds, it seemed, were stronger than blood. The morning sickness hit during my business management midterm. I barely made it to the bathroom, my half-finished exam abandoned on the desk. As I splashed cold water on my face, my phone buzzed with Damon's name. The house is mine. His voice crackled through the speaker. I'm selling it. The tile floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. You can't. We bought it together. Check the deed. It's in my name. You have 30 days to move out. I gripped the sink, remembering how he'd insisted on handling the paperwork himself. Another betrayal I'd been too trusting to see coming. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. His tone shifted, becoming almost gentle. Look, I know you're taking these classes, trying to prove something. But let's be realistic. You need to focus on finding a place you can actually afford. The bathroom door creaked open. My professor, Dr. Chen, stepped in, concern etched on her face. I have to go, I said, ending the call before he could respond. Everything all right? She asked, holding out my exam. You have 20 minutes left. I stared at the paper, the questions about business strategy and market analysis swimming before my eyes. I can't. You can, she interrupted. I've seen your work, Lila. Don't let whatever's happening out there stop you from finishing what you started in here. Later that evening, at the Lark's house, I pushed my dinner around my plate while Evelyn and Harvey exchanged worried glances. The house was supposed to be your fresh start, Evelyn said softly. Harvey set down his fork. He's doing this to punish you for the business loan. I should have known. My voice cracked. All those times he said he'd handle the finances because I was too busy with work. There might be a way, Harvey began, but was cut off by a commotion at the front door. Damon burst into the dining room, Marissa trailing behind him. Really, Dad? A business loan for her. Lower your voice, Harvey warned. She's not even family anymore. Damon's face was flushed. That money was meant for my startup. Family? Evelyn stood slowly. Family doesn't abandon their responsibilities, Damon. I pressed a hand to my churning stomach, and Evelyn caught the gesture. Her eyes widened slightly, understanding dawning on her face. Get out. Harvey's voice was quiet but firm. Until you remember the values we raised you with, you're not welcome here. As Damon stormed out, Marissa lingering uncertainly in his wake, I felt the weight of unspoken truths pressing down. Soon, I'd have to tell them about the baby. Soon, everything would change again. But first, I had an exam to pass. The doctor's office was too bright, too sterile. I stared at the ultrasound screen, at the tiny flicker of life that had somehow survived all this chaos. Everything looks healthy, the technician smiled. Would you like to know the gender? Before I could answer, the door burst open. Damon stood there, Marissa hovering anxiously behind him. So it's true, he said flatly. My mother called, told me I needed to be here. The technician glanced between us. I'll give you a moment. As she left, Damon moved closer to the screen. Were you planning to tell me? Like you told me about Marissa? The words came out sharper than I intended. Or about putting the house in your name?
His jaw tightened.
This is different. This is a complication? Marissa cut in, her voice tight. We have plans, Damon. The startup, the new house. Be quiet, he snapped, surprising us both. He turned back to me. How far along? 12 weeks. I wiped the ultrasound gel off my stomach, pulling my shirt down. Don't worry, I'm not asking for anything. You can't raise a child alone, he said. Be reasonable. There are options. The word hung in the air like poison. From the doorway, Marissa nodded encouragingly. I sat up slowly, gathering my strength. Your parents already know. They're helping me find a new place, since you're so keen on selling our home. My parents need to stay out of this. His voice rose. They're not thinking clearly. This baby would just complicate everything. This baby, I interrupted, is your daughter. The word landed like a physical blow. Damon stepped back, colliding with Marissa, who grabbed his arm possessively. A girl? His voice cracked. Due in February. I stood, gathering my things. Your mother's already picking out names. Funny how she's more excited about being a grandmother than you are about being a father. You're manipulating them, Marissa accused. Using this pregnancy to turn them against us. Enough. Damon's face had gone pale. I need time to think. Take all the time you want, I said, moving past them. But remember this moment, Damon. Remember how you wanted to erase your daughter before you even knew her. In the hallway, I nearly collapsed against the wall, my hands shaking. My phone buzzed, a text from Evelyn. How did it go? Harvey's making your favorite dinner. I touched my stomach gently, feeling stronger. They might not be my blood, but Evelyn and Harvey had shown me more love than Damon ever had. My daughter would have grandparents who cherished her, even if her father couldn't see her worth. Sometimes I realized the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. The eviction notice was taped to my door when I returned from my final exam. 30 days had passed too quickly. Inside, half-packed boxes cluttered the living room, a visual reminder of everything I was about to lose. My phone rang, Harvey's number. The lawyer found something, he said without preamble. The house down payment. Damon used joint account funds. Hope flickered briefly. So, I could fight it. We could, but a sudden coughing fit interrupted him. When he recovered, his voice was weaker. Evelyn and I want you to stay with us instead. Just until the baby comes. Before I could respond, someone pounded on the front door. Through the peephole, I saw Damon and Marissa. I have to call you back, I whispered. They barged in as soon as I opened the door. Marissa immediately started taking photos of the boxes. Documentation, she explained smugly. Proving you're complying with the eviction. Actually, I started. About the house. Save it, Damon cut in. I'm not just taking the house. I'm filing for full custody. The world tilted sideways.
What?
You're unemployed, taking classes you can't afford, living off my parents' charity. He ticked off each point on his fingers. No judge will see you as fit to be a primary parent. I have a job. Part-time video editing? Marissa laughed. Meanwhile, Damon's startup just secured major funding. We can provide stability, a real home.
We.
My voice cracked. We're getting married, Damon announced. The baby needs a proper family structure. I grabbed the counter to steady myself, my other hand instinctively covering my stomach. You can't do this. Watch me. He moved closer, his voice low. You really think you can raise our daughter alone? Give her the life she deserves? Stop fighting this, Lila. It's better for everyone. Everyone meaning you? Meaning the baby. His expression softened manipulatively. Think about her future, not your pride. As they left, Marissa paused in the doorway. We'll let you keep visitation rights. We're not monsters. The door clicked shut behind them. I slid to the floor, surrounded by boxes containing the fragments of my old life. My phone buzzed again. Harvey, probably worried. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. They were right. What could I offer my daughter? A cramped apartment, discount baby clothes, a mother scrambling between work and school? Meanwhile, Damon and Marissa could give her everything, except love, except understanding of what real family means. The baby kicked, as if protesting my thoughts. I pressed my hand against the spot, remembering Evelyn's words from yesterday. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is ask for help. I picked up my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed Harvey's number. I couldn't fight this alone anymore. But maybe I didn't have to. The call came at 3 a.m. A drunk driver. Both Evelyn and Harvey. Gone before the ambulance arrived. I sat numb in their lawyer's office 3 days later, my black dress too tight across my swollen belly. Damon paced by the window, while Marissa perched on the arm of his chair, her engagement ring catching the light. Before we begin, Mr. Patterson said, adjusting his glasses, I should mention that Harvey made changes to their will 2 weeks ago. Damon stopped pacing. Changes? The estate, in its entirety, goes to Lila and her unborn child. The silence was deafening. That's impossible, Damon's voice cracked. They're my parents. They were, I whispered, the first words I'd spoken since arriving. You manipulated them, he snarled, turning on me. Used the pregnancy to turn them against me. Like you used Marissa to destroy our marriage? The words burst out, months of pain finally breaking free. They saw you, Damon. The real you. The son who abandoned his wife, rejected his child, betrayed everything they taught you about family. Marissa stood, her confidence wavering. We should contest it. There's more, Patterson interrupted. Harvey left a letter. He pulled out an envelope, Harvey's bold handwriting stark against the white paper. As Patterson read, I watched Damon's face crumble. Son, if you're hearing this, you've lost your way. The man you've become, the choices you've made, they're beneath you. Your mother and I chose Lila not to punish you, but because she embodies the values we tried to instill in you. She's fighting for family, for future, for love. What are you fighting for? Damon grabbed the letter, his hand shaking. This isn't fair. They can't just. Can't what? I stood, one hand protectively over my daughter. Can't see through your act? Can't choose kindness over cruelty? They gave you everything, Damon. Love, support, chances to make things right. But you chose pride instead. I chose success, he shouted. A better life. Something you could never understand. But they did understand. I cut in softly. That's why they made their choice. Marissa touched his arm. We can fight this.
No.
His voice was hollow. We can't fight Dad's words. They're all true. He looked at me then, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time since this all began. In his eyes, I saw something crack. The facade of the ambitious, ruthless man he'd tried to become. The custody threat, he said quietly. I won't. I can't do that to her. He gestured to my stomach. Dad was right. I lost my way. As he left, Marissa trailing uncertainly behind, I sank back into my chair. Victory felt nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of triumph, I felt only grief for Evelyn and Harvey, for the man Damon could have been, for the family we might have had. But my daughter kicked, reminding me that some family bonds survive even the deepest betrayals. And sometimes, justice comes not through revenge, but through truth finally spoken aloud. 6 months later, I rocked Sophia in Evelyn's old chair, watching dawn break over the garden Harvey had loved so much. The roses he'd planted were blooming, their scent drifting through the open window. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, I saw Marissa loading boxes into her Tesla, Damon standing frozen in the driveway. Their perfect future had crumbled faster than our marriage.
The doorbell rang.
I hadn't expected him today. I signed the papers, Damon said when I opened the door, his eyes immediately finding Sophia. The house is yours. Everything's yours. You could have mailed them. I needed. He swallowed hard. I found Dad's journal. In his study. Sophia stirred in my arms, and something in Damon's face cracked. Could I hold her? Just once. I hesitated, then carefully transferred her. She looked tiny in his arms, her dark eyes, his eyes, studying his face. He wrote about failure. Damon continued softly, gently touching Sophia's cheek. Not about business or money, but about teaching me what really matters. He blamed himself for pushing me so hard toward success that I forgot about everything else. Harvey was proud of you, I said. Until I became everything he feared. Damon's voice cracked. A man who valued ambition over family. Who ran from love because it felt like weakness. Marissa's car started up, the engines filling the silence between us. We watched her drive away. She couldn't handle the failure, he explained unnecessarily. The startup crashed last week. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's fitting, isn't it? I threw away everything real for something that turned out to be smoke. Sophia grabbed his finger, and tears spilled down his cheeks. She has Mom's smile. I know. I touched the locket around my neck. Evelyn's last gift. She'll know them, Damon. I'll make sure she knows how much they loved her. And me. His voice was barely a whisper. Will she know me? I took Sophia back, feeling her warm weight against my heart. That depends on you. Not on your success or failure, but on whether you're ready to be the father she deserves. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I'd like to try. Not for custody or control, but just to be better. To be someone Dad would have been proud of. As he walked away, I noticed the garden shadows had shifted. Morning had fully arrived, washing away the darkness. Sophia yawned, and I smiled, remembering Evelyn's words about new beginnings. Sometimes revenge isn't about making others suffer, but about growing strong enough to rise above their weakness. Sometimes justice comes not from winning, but from letting go of what was lost and embracing what remains. I held my daughter closer, watching the roses sway in the morning breeze. We were home,